Hmm. You just have to interrupt me. I thought I
Good
saw
morning, everybody.
Natasha out there somewhere. Hi, Natasha.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. Sorry for being a little bit late. Had a different meeting that ran a little bit long. Well, thanks for joining us on our monthly broker update. This is kind of a monthly open forum to have your questions answered. Ask the brokers, ask myself, ask Todd. Anything that's on your mind, anything concerning. We always have a little bit of an agenda that we'd like to discuss things that are top of mind, that are making our phone ring, that are making our emails go off. So a couple of them, I'll just dive right in and then we'll open it up to questions. A couple of them in this new climate of lack of inventory. I mean, inventory is improving, but we've had a lack of inventory for, I don't know, 18 months now it's below what we need for absorption rates of incoming people, right? So what that's led to is an increase in land sales. And people are just, okay, well, I'll just buy a piece of property and I'll go build my own property. And what that has led to is, I would say at least daily, Todd, is that correct? Probably daily, we get a question, an email about the affidavit of disclosure.
Right.
And affidavit of disclosure / public report, those are two sides of the same coin. Okay, so you either need one or you need the other, if depending on how many pieces of parcel you have. And I'll just get real specific. Affidavit of disclosure is a state law to be required, right? So it's Arizona revised statutes that you need that. And it's anything under 5 parcels that have never been subdivided and are in an unincorporated area of the valley. So there are lots of areas around here that are unincorporated. And if you have that, then you would need an affidavit of disclosure. And affidavit of disclosure is a simple form. A lot of the questions are similar to what there's on the vacant land spuds anyways. So affidavit of disclosure is a requirement. And what we've run into is people just don't realize or understand when and where it's required. And that leads to confusion. It leads to agents being upset because we're not issuing a CDA because they don't have the document, and they ask us, well, why do we need it? And I don't think we need it. Well, just our broker policy for us is we never want to be the one that says we don't need it. And the reason is because the penalty, if you did need it, is should the buyer pursue that, is so severe. And it's so severe because it's full restitution. If you read the document, anytime you've delivered that affidavit of disclosure, the buyer has 5 days to rescind the contract. So if it's closed and you never gave them that, and now there's something that's material that was on that, what does that mean? What does the buyer have the ability to do? Well, the buyer has the ability to sue the seller and take it all the way back to before they wrote the offer. And what that means is the seller has to buy the property back and could be on the hook for any payments that were made, any interest that the seller paid or that the buyer paid, any costs associated with surveys, anything that the buyer had paid is out of pocket and now can't use that property. So super important document because of the severity of what could happen if you actually needed it. That's why we as a brokerage we just don't want to be on that side of it. We don't want to say yes or no. So what does that mean for you guys as an agent? Well, if you're the listing agent, I would say there's probably, if it's even a question, there's probably no good reason that you could give me to not have the seller fill it out. It's just an insurance policy. I know a lot of people get a little freaked out because it's notarized, but my argument to that is, okay, so if it's notarized, all the notary is saying is that you are who you say you are. And I verified the signature, right? So you're telling me that every other document you sign might be someone else? So it doesn't, to me, it just doesn't hold water. Why? Because of that one thing. Why are people so shy about signing that one? It's just, to me, it's just another disclosure that is needed. So if you're the listing side, there's really not, I can't find a good enough reason to not just present it to my seller. If your seller tells you to kick rocks and he's not going to do it and 100% will not do it, okay, shoot me an email and say that, and we'll take that email and put it in your file. Now, if you're on the buy side, similar situation. I mean, you're obviously not responsible for that document. You don't have any contact with the seller. So if they tell you the same thing, they're not going to provide it. Okay, well, either send us that email, send us an email from the seller directly that says that, hey, it's not needed. Send us an email from the title company that says, hey, it's not needed. And we'll put that in your file. Outside of that, again, it's really, to me, it's just an education thing for our clients. I feel like there's not a good reason to not get it. It's just like the spuds, just like the insurance history. There's really I just don't see a reason to not provide it, because it's just, the penalty for not is just too big. And that's kind of all I want to say about that. I don't want to get into the whole nuts and bolts of what the form says. And it's pretty simple disclosure. It's just a land disclosure. But that's just the reasoning why we've taken the stance we have, is because it's come up so many times recently. And I mean, even today we've been dealing with one, and I have a call after this meeting to talk to one of our agents about what we need. Do we need a public report? Do we need the affidavit of disclosure? So that was, I guess, a high level view of what, from our perspective, why we need that. Does anybody have any questions about the affidavit of disclosure? Anything you guys are seeing out there? Any questions as to why we need it? No? Okay.
Well, I did share a couple of things in the chat. One was an article that came out from the AAR recently, and we always remind agents that the AAR online website is a great source of information. It's like your own private Google Arizona real estate search engine. You can type in HOA best practices. There's an article about who's supposed to fill out what part of the HOA then, and when we get there, and there's some good information on that. Also, just section 4 of the vacant land purchase contract, if a buyer feels adamant that it's required, it's right in the contract that the seller would provide it if it's applicable. So a cure notice is one option as a buyer. But I think at the end of the day, I agree with what Andrew said, is that when in doubt, fill it out, right? If you're a seller and you're not sure you need it, fill it out, because the penalty for not having it. Can you imagine someone who bought, vacant land after the major price surge we saw in the, mid-late 2000s, 2005, 6, 7, 8, and some $200,000 lot might have sold for $600,000, and then all of a sudden, after the Great Recession and the national housing crisis, that $600,000 lot went straight back to 200 or less in about probably 2012. Can you imagine if a buyer's attorney just kind of sifted through the paperwork, found, wait a minute, they give you that affidavit of disclosure? And all of a sudden they didn't. And now they're going back to the seller saying, you need to buy back the $200,000 lot for $600,000. Here's all of our closing costs and every loan payment we've made for the last 5 years. Can you imagine how harmful that would be to the client for one 2 or 3 page piece of paper? So you bet, if we represent a seller, we're going to want it, whether it's 100% absolutely needed or not. And as a buyer, we're going to ask for it every time. It's just like asking for a spuds. I mean, we know what the Arizona law says. We're not going to just waive it unless there's no other alternatives. And you'd be wise to have an email from your client saying, contrary to your advice, I'm going to not fill that out, or I'm going to let that one slide. Perfect. That's on them. And you need to keep a copy of that email for your file. Like Dax always says, paper your file. There's a paper trail for you that could come in handy someday.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, again, it's just for us as a, risk management. It's just something that I don't think is worth not trying to get. It's just not worth it. So I'm looking at a couple other things that as a brokerage we want to talk about, and that's so we've been at it for about, I don't know, 3 months now with the new CDA process. I just wanted to basically open it up for questions. If there's any questions about that process, when you get one, how you get one, what happens if you don't get the one you want? Is there any questions on that, guys? I know it's a new process, so we're trying to get it streamlined, but ultimately the goal is to get you guys paid as quickly as possible. Is there any questions? Anybody having any issues with that? Any questions, concerns, comments? Is it great? You love it? Anything at all? And you can type in the chat too if you don't want to. Okay, someone typed, not sure what that is. Okay, so I'll go broad-based. So what So when you create a new file, so here, I'll just go through the whole process of what happens from the broker department and the closing department when you create a new file. So when you create a new file in SkySlope, which is our document review platform, it's our compliance platform. When you get a new file in SkySlope, it's going to email our paperwork processor. His name's Shane. He's going to get an email and he's going to see that you created a file. Shane's going to do an initial review and he'll send you anything that he'll create. He'll take stuff off, he'll add stuff in. Anything that you may need in that file, he's going to create. He's going to send you an email and say, hey, I reviewed your file. Here's the things you're going to need. Okay, so that'll happen. And then as your file goes along, the brokers will be reviewing the file, reviewing the contracts, all those things. 10 days out from closing, whatever closing date you put in SkySlope, you're going to get another email from the system that's going to say, hey, these things are still pending. Please take a look at your file and update anything that is needed. Okay, so then you'll get that. So then 5 days out, you're going to get an email from the closing department. And if your file is complete, except for the final walkthrough, which is, we understand is you could do it all the way up to the day of closing if you really were in a pinch. But except for that, you'll get what's called a closing disbursement authorization, or CDA is what we talk about. So it's going to say one of two things. Either it's going to say, send all the money to my home group, the file is not complete, or pay the agent X, pay the agent Y, and then it would be up to you, it'd be incumbent on you as the agent to go ahead and contact your title company to make arrangements for that payment, make arrangements for that check. So that's the overall process. So what happens if you, on day 5, you get an email from closing that says, hey, it said pay my home group. Well, there's something missing. We'll have noted what's missing in your file. If you update that and then email commission@myhomegroup.com, we'll take a look at it, and time permitting, we will issue you another CDA that says pay the agent. Now, if it goes all the way down to closing and that has never, whatever document you have has never been updated, or you updated at closing, not to worry, we will just process it through our system and you'll get ACH, which obviously should be straight to your bank account. So that's the overall 30,000 foot view of our CDA process. And during your entire escrow process, you're going to get 4 automated touches from us on how you're going to get paid, right? So you're going to get from Shane, you're going to get from SkySlope, you're going to get from closing, and then you're going to get one a day before, whether or not you're going to get paid or not. So guys, that's something from our perspective. You should have the information to close out your file, but we understand things happen, prices change, addendums happen, documents that maybe we didn't realize we needed come up. All those things happen. We totally get that. So that's why we try to do 5 days out and give you an opportunity to take a look at your file again and see if there's anything at all that we can do on our end to get you a check from the closing or from your title company. Because quite honestly, that is our goal. That is 100% our goal. We want every single agent to every time get a check from the escrow company and not have to wait for My Home Group to process your check. That is always our goal. That's our goal as a closing department. That's our goal as the broker department. So if there's anything during your escrow that we can do to help you answer a question, feel free to reach out. I think as of today, I feel like the SkySlope checklists we've gone through them over and over again to make sure that we're trying to catch the most amount of documents that are always required, and make sure that agents know what we're going to be looking for. And that's the purpose of Shane's initial review. So all these things we've put all these systems in place to assist you in closing your file quickly. That's kind of a 30,000 foot view.
I'd like to add something to that. I teach classes for the Arizona School of Real Estate and a few here at My Home Group as well. And unfortunately, when they're for CE credit, there has to be a system in place when it's a Zoom class to verify attendance. So you all have been in these classes before, and there's a poll that we take randomly, or there's a password that we throw out, and you got to have all 3 of them at the end of the day to get credit. What I always say at the beginning of those classes is that here's how it works, but you're in charge of your credit. In other words, not me, not Andrew. We're not over there saying, hey, did you get the password? Are you sure you wrote it down? Because you're going to need, we can tell you how it works. We can tell you why it's there, but you're in charge of you. So it's like you're in charge of your paycheck, not us. So if you create the file in SkySlope within 5 days of execution, and you select the proper checklist, and you look and see after Shane's initial review, check in a few days later. I always say check in weekly, kind of like you want an LSU from your lender every week when you have a deal in escrow. Well, we want you to review your file in SkySlope every week. Kind of your own little version, and you're watching it and tracking it through. And when you get that 10-day reminder, I just had one recently. That was so cool. 10 days prior, hey, Todd, you still need the title report. You still need the walkthrough. You still need this. And of course, the CDA, which the closing department will do, got all that stuff in. And the goal is have your file complete, except for the walkthrough, at least 1 week prior to closing. Closing's a week anyway. You've heard me say that in classes before. And the point is that if you do that, when closing goes to issue the CDA 5 days prior to COE, every time it'll say pay the agent, right? And that would be our goal. That would be a bonus. That would be awesome. If for some reason it goes out 5 days prior and it doesn't have the direct cut piece, you need to be on the phone, on the email. Hey, broker, hey, closing, what's going on? What am I missing? And usually if you can get what we need quickly and we can turn it around in a day or two, we could closing could revise the CDA and authorize the direct cut. If they don't, then you're going to have to wait it out. Then the money's going to come in here, and then you're going to have to work with me or work with them to finish the job. And maybe at that point it's too late to get something signed or whatever, and we have to discuss a missing paperwork, acknowledgement or something to clean up the file so we can wrap it up and get you paid.
Hey, Valerie, real quick, what do you mean differently with referrals? So from our perspective, if we're paying out a referral, we just need the referral paperwork in the file and the W-9, all that stuff to pay out the referral. If it's an incoming referral coming from an outside agent, we're never going to know until we actually have the check that there's a referral coming. So there'd be no way for us to issue a disbursement authorization for that. So incoming referral, you're going to have to wait till we get the check. Outgoing referral, yeah, we'll pay it out. We'll pay it out through the CDA as long as your file is complete and we have the proper breakdown of the commission and everything in SkySlope. So yes, we can do that for sure.
Let me elaborate on that real quick. So just to be clear, if someone's referring a client to you, like another broker in Chicago referred a buyer in Arizona to you, you have to create a regular file in SkySlope for us as the purchase file, the sale file, if you will. And in that will be a referral component where, like Andrew said, the referral agreement, a copy of their license, and a copy of their W-9. So closing knows how to pay them. Now there's still a commission tab in your file where you can put a note in there about don't forget the 20% referral fee to XYZ in Chicago. You can help them out in the commission tab by directing the dollars. But if it's a situation where you referred a buyer to a broker in Chicago, an outgoing referral, then there is no sale file or listing file in SkySlope because we're not representing the client. You would create a referral only file in SkySlope. You would put the signed referral agreement and in the file. Obviously, you don't need to upload our W-9 and our license. We know we have that on file. But then closing knows when that check comes in to match it up to that file and pay out that, or how to pay you out of that check that comes in from that referral. Does that make sense? So keep in mind, and we use terms like originating broker and receiving broker when we talk about referral agreements, and that can be confusing to people because the receiving broker is the broker who receives the business. They receive the client from you. The originating broker is the one who receives the money. So, maybe that's why that's sometimes confusing.
Yep.
Todd,
Yeah,
can I just make a comment about that?
Yeah.
Firstly, I'll go back a month and say thank you for the help that you gave me because the referral that I had for the listing in Nevada actually closed yesterday. So thumbs up there and all. But I'll tell you this, that was my first use of SkySlope. I'm just saying this. I don't know if I'd say it, take a look at it or just understand the challenges, but it was very difficult in that referral to set up a SkySlope. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, the lines that are that are required in that type of referral. Some of that stuff you don't know. If
Right.
I'm referring a listing,
Mhm.
there's really no need. There's possibility that I'll never know who the buyer is because it's only the listing side. And so just to get the file started, until I knew that stuff, I was actually having to put like name of buyer. I don't know.
Right.
It was what I actually put in there. But
Right.
I just say that because somebody else, the first time they do that type of referral could run into that. The sky
Yeah.
slope.
Well, that's a good point, and I can share with you a little bit. Probably what I told you on the phone was you're gonna have to guess at some things. Like if I'm referring a buyer to a broker in Chicago, we don't know what house they're gonna buy. What's the address gonna be? 8360 East Raintree Drive, 123 Any Street, any town in Illinois. I mean, I'm gonna have to make something up if it's a required field in Skyslope. I mean, I put stuff in all the time, and if I don't know the other agent's name, their name is to follow. And if I don't know their brokerage name, it's to be determined. If I don't know the escrow officer, her name is to follow, and her escrow company is to be determined. To follow, to be determined, just like John Smith or XYZ title. I'm gonna have to trick the system with some generic information to get it to take my file. And then as the deal materializes, I hear from somebody, the broker in Chicago, a month later, hey, by the way, we found a house. You know, what's the address on that? Oh, 456 East Elm Street. Perfect. Nightmare on Elm Street. And I put it in there. I can go in and update that record in the file. And then, hey, be sure you send me a copy of that settlement statement with the check when it closes, okay? Because my broker needs that for the file. And when it all comes in, by the time closing gets it, they've got a settlement statement, they've got a check, and they can update all those deals, and we have a solid record for future reference. But yes, at the beginning, it might be John and Mary Smith, and it might be 123 Any Street, and the name of the person is to follow, and the company is to be determined.
As long as I mean, that's cool. As long as that hack is acceptable to you guys until we get the fill in the blank information. That cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, Andrew, that's not a problem at all. And that's, you know, it's kind of a byproduct of we're using a system, and that's just the rules, and that's just the rules and the way they set it up. So they have required fields that we have to abide by in their system to create a file. And like Todd said, until you know the information, we're fine with, especially on referral files, because usually, like Todd said, if we're the referring broker and all we're getting is a check, we get it that you're probably not going to have the information. And really, until that check comes, for us, aside from reviewing your referral agreement, there's really nothing else for us to do. So, you know, if it's as long as you've created some kind of file with your name and an XYZ referral agreement, that's really all we need. And any of that further information is fine. I mean, even the day we receive the check, I mean, we're not gonna, at that point, as long as we know that there's a check there and we go look in SkySlop and see if you had a referral, that's really all we care about. Because then the hardest part for us is we get a referral check and it has an address but no name, and then we have to become detectives and try to figure out where, how, why we have a check for $2,500 from Chicago.
Well, I think in any case in SkySlope, especially on referrals, you know, what you start with is a hunk of clay. You know, you got a file in the system. It's a hunk of clay at the moment. We got an agent name. We might have a property address. We might have, you know, something in it. And every week as things go by, you start shaping that thing into a ball. You start shaping into a little rabbit or bunny head, and pretty soon there's a bunny tail. By the time we get to closing, whether it's a referral or a sale file or whatever it is, it now looks like a real thing. And now we have a real file to go by. So I think it's not a one and done process is what I'm trying to say.
No, it's not. But I wouldn't be too concerned about it either, especially on a referral file. You know, something like that. We get it. I've sent referrals out. Todd sent referrals out. We understand how hard it can be to get information at time and be kept. A lot of times we'll send out the referral, and the next communication we'll get is, oh, by the way, there's a check coming your way. I'm like, oh, okay, great. I didn't even know you got an escrow or closed a deal or whatever it was. So we understand that. And we'll totally work with you on, you know, even helping you create the SkySlope file if we need to at the end of it. Especially on referrals, that's when we understand completely. It's just is kind of the nature of the business and nature of sending out referrals to especially outside agents, outside of our brokerage. If it's inside the brokerage, we can navigate that a little bit better and have a little bit more control over the process. But outside brokerage, we're kind of out there at their mercy to get the information, to get the check, to get the settlement statement, to get their W-9, to get their tax ID number, all that fun stuff, get their license number, all those things that we really don't have any control over. So we get it.
Yeah, I see a couple things on the list of topics. Did you have any more you wanted to roll into, or you want to pick up a couple of things?
No, let's go over the list.
Well, one of them was that I've already spoke to, sort of somebody asked if the market seems to have slowed down. Now, I taught a class on Saturday, and I always share at the beginning of my classes the number of active listings, and I think it was 7641 or something like that. And I made a comment, something like that. That's up substantially from a couple months ago when it was around 4,000. And someone chimed in the class that it was actually something like, actually it was 7241. And they chimed in and said that 3 months ago, it was 3620 in the number of active listings in our local AR MLS or Flex MLS. Greater Maricopa County, kind of, if you will. So that's 100% increase in the number of active listings. That's pretty crazy. On the other hand, normal active inventory is 20,000. So we're still substantially low. And at the end of the day, your buyer's buying one house. And if they happen to want the one house in that 400 or under price range that 400 other people want, well, then you know how that goes. It's extremely competitive. If it's, somebody was talking the other day about they have a $6 million listing and it's been on the market for 75 days and what's going on? It's like, hey, that's pretty normal. The pool of buyers for that house is the size of a dot on a piece of paper. I mean, there might be one buyer in the market for that property right now. Clearly, we understand the scope of all that. But the other person mentioned coming soon versus pocket listing. I'd love to speak on that subject for a minute and get Andrew's thoughts. First of all, you have to know when you take a new listing, you get a signed listing agreement. The listing is the listing contract, not sharing the listing on MLS. That's sharing the listing. That's not the listing. You have a rule to follow with AR MLS and with my home group that you have 2 business days to share that listing on MLS. Unless you have something in the additional term section from the owner stating, please don't go active on MLS until we get the house painted or the yard cleaned up, or until September 15th, or indefinitely. Don't go on at all. I just want to hire you to help me sell it to the neighbor or the tenant or whatever it is. So make sure you have an owner directive in the listing contract anytime you're not prepared to go active on MLS in 2 days or less. The other part is that if they do say don't go active until further notice, that is a pocket listing because it's not being shared on MLS. And a pocket listing means you have a signed listing contract, but you haven't marketed to anyone. And the new clear communication rules or cooperation rules that came out last spring say that the only place you can market that listing is internally inside the 4 walls of your brokerage. Until the minute you put a sign on the ground or you put a post on Facebook, as soon as you market that externally, now the new rules say you have 1 day to make sure you share that listing on MLS with at least a coming soon status. So those are some things you need to know. These are owner-driven rules, not something the agent says, well, I'm just going to get a signed contract and I'm going to sit on this thing for a week or two. No, that's agent driven, and that promotes single agent, dual agency, which most of these rules have been prepared to work against. They want the owner to decide, are we going active right away or are we delaying? And are you going to market this thing as coming soon, or are you going to market it internally until we're ready?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why would we, if we get a listing, a new listing, why would we just do coming soon? What's the purpose of doing that?
Well, first of all, in most cases, it's born out of the fact that the seller isn't ready. Like they aren't ready for showings. They aren't really ready for offers. And in that situation, then, but at the same time, we would tell you, a lot of agents will say, well, then call me back in 2 weeks and then we'll sign all the paperwork. You're going to end up losing that listing to someone else because they're talking to their friends about selling and dolling up the house and who's a good window washer and things like that. So if a seller wants to hire me today, we're signing a listing contract. But if they're not ready to market the property yet or to show the property yet, then we're dropping in the owner directive saying, let's not go active until after Labor Day weekend. And then my second question then is, okay, we're not going to go active till Labor Day. What do you want to do between now and then? Do you want to be coming soon, or do you want just for me to have a pocket listing that I market internally, or do you want no marketing at all? I need you to put it in the listing contract. And they're driving the bus on that. And if they say, no sign, no showings, no offers, nothing, I just want to wait till after okay, there you go. Then obedience is one of our fiduciary duties, then we need to follow that. But if they're like, no, why don't you just market it, let a few people in your company know internally for the first week. And then once we see if we're getting some progress made, then maybe we can put a sign in the ground and say coming soon for another week. It'll get anyone in the neighborhood or who's out driving around really hungry for a property. Let's let those people have first chance at it. And then if we don't sell it by then, go ahead and light it up, go active on us, and boom, let's do back-to-back open houses and over the weekend and paper at the neighborhood with flyers and whatever. Does that make sense? Andrew, do you have a comment on?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate. I know a lot of people will hear us say, get that directive in writing to not list it, get that directive in writing to not show it, get that directive in writing to do whatever it is, right? And everybody's like, well, the seller just told me. Okay. Well, I've answered 2 separate ADRE complaints this year for agents not following seller instructions. And it could be argued that the agent did have seller instructions, but they didn't have them in writing and they didn't have them on the ER. And then the relationship soured, and here we go, ADRE complaint. So it may sound like we're asking you to do overkill. Why can't a handshake agreement? Why can't I just, rely on what they told me? And the reasoning is because at a certain point, there may come a time where you need to point to the document to defend yourself. Right. And if you don't have that ammunition, then I can't do anything for you. So I can't, it's hard to rely on hearsay. It's hard to rely on, they told me to do X, right? If you have a text, if you have an email, okay, that's good. But the best is having that directive written out on the ER and both parties have signed it. Then we can't argue that. Is what it is. That's what you told me to do. Right. So it does become important. It's just like anything else in this world, right? It's never important until you need it. It's right. Is your homeowner's insurance important? No, but if your roof got torn off in a storm, it would be. Mm-hmm. Car insurance important? Not until you get in a car accident, right? It's just one of those things where I would rather have it written in that directive, written in my listing, and if I don't ever need it, great. But if I do need it, I have it there. Right. And that's over and over again. We're going to tell you guys, paper your file. Make sure to write it in your file. And I know there's a couple new agents on the call today. If there's nothing else you hear from us today, just make sure whatever you're working on, whatever you're doing, whatever the sellers told you to do, whatever the buyers told you to do, whatever the conversation is between agents, whatever, make sure it's in writing, make sure it's signed, make sure it's addendum, make sure it's written somewhere and signed by all parties. Because the easiest way to defend yourself is just to pull out the document and say, well, here's what it says. What are you talking about? This is what I was directed to do. And it's just one of those things where it's a tough lesson to learn when you're going through it. It's a tough thing to learn the hard way, but we've just seen it so much recently where all it would have taken was a simple, either an email or an addendum or one line on a contract would have saved people a lot of heartache, would have saved a lot of back and forth, would have saved a lot of hard feelings, and probably saved relationships with clients if you had just got it in writing.
Yeah.
So,
well, we call it risk management, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It really is risk management. So get the email, get the directive, get whatever it is. I hear agents every day, but I told them, on the phone, I told them, you know what? And the problem is they're not going to remember. And some people have selective memory, especially when something's on the line. It kind of sounds negative, but almost assume that every transaction you enter, there could be a problem down the road. Yep. And if for some reason a consumer goes to the department or to the brokerage with a complaint, their argument is going to be, you're the licensed professional that knew it needed to be in writing, right? That's going to be their argument. And when we don't have it in writing, well, I don't have it in writing. I told them, yeah, no. You're the licensed professional that's supposed to know better. Just like when you hire a licensed contractor to work on your AC, you expect an estimate, you expect an invoice, you expect a warranty of some sort on parts or labor for a period of time. And if they don't honor that, you're upset because they're a licensed contractor. Well, so are you, right? And I think that's a big part of that as well, for sure. Hey, I just shared my screen. I'm sure most of you are aware that the new buyer advisory, came out a couple months ago. And, in this market, Andrew was kind of speaking to, you all see that up there on the screen? I just opened zip form is all. But, I love the opening paragraph that a real estate agent is vital to the purchase of real property in Arizona. And not only do you help people find a property, you help them negotiate the deal. You also help guide them through the inspection period, the Binzer process, the closing phase, et cetera. And so when they wonder why you make 2.5% or 3%, well, these are the services that I provide. That can be huge. So don't forget to get this signed up front and sell that paragraph that sells you. But also the newest one in this thing is we've been seeing a lot of contracts over the past few months with buyers waiving the inspection period. Never a good idea to waive it completely. If anything, shrink it from 10 days to 7 or 10 days to 5 or even 3. Never waive it completely. We also see buyers waiving the appraisal contingency. I'd rather see them modify the appraisal contingency to be list price versus purchase price if you're paying over or something like that. But any of the waivers that they're doing now, we should have been covering ourselves with an email. Hey, contrary to my advice, you want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, please confirm. But this now, even you might go as far as having the buyer initial next to this paragraph, contingency waivers. Look at what it sort of says there, that there's numerous contingencies, including but not limited to inspections, appraisal, et cetera. If the buyer decides to waive those things, adverse consequences may result that could place either their earnest money or other monetary damages. I'm sure you all know that a seller in certain cases does not always have to take the earnest money as liquidated damages if the buyer is found in breach of contract. In some cases, if they put a deposit down on another house or they've already made plans to move, they may have actual damages that are greater than the earnest money. And in some cases, they may opt to leave the earnest money on the table and sue. So be careful with that one. But read that paragraph and work that into your pre-contract discussion with a buyer.
So we've been talking a lot, and I want to go down this list. So Nicole, I think I see you on the call. You had a question about fair housing cameras in the phone or in the home. What was the specific question about that? Are you still on the call, Nicole?
Yeah, she's there. She's gonna have to unmute. There you go.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, I just attended one of the fair housing CE classes, and they were talking about the cameras in the house and fair housing and what you say and all that stuff, that you should have to disclose that on your listing in the comment section down, where we put like our little comments for the listing agents and stuff. Have you heard any more about that?
No, I haven't heard anything about that, but I would speak to, as a buyer, if I was a buyer's agent, one of my first things I would say when I meet anybody for the first time when we're walking into our first house, I always told them, I would assume that you are going to be recorded, video and voice. So please don't say anything that could be utilized against us in a negotiation. Like, I absolutely love this house, whatever it takes. And I would assume that we're going to be recorded, because me personally, I feel like I have no reasonable right to privacy when I'm in someone else's house.
Right.
I think that's gone all the way up to the courts, and they've agreed that if you're in someone else's house. Now, for a licensee, should we disclose it? I would disclose it on my listing that say, hey, we have cameras and you might be recorded. I would disclose that. But I also would have that conversation as a buyer's agent. Like, listen, we more than likely in this day and age, there's going to be at least one, your doorbell recorder, right? I mean, you're going to have at least one. Mm-hmm. So I would just say that, like, just understand we're going into someone else's property and more than likely we will be recorded. Are you okay with that? If they say no, then we'll have to figure something else out, because I would say 90% of houses have at least something, a Ring doorbell, something, right? So
Yeah, and I think on the flip side of that too, they were saying the difficult conversations you have to have with your
Oh,
sellers when they're
Yeah.
watching their Ring doorbell with the buyers going in,
oh, yeah.
and that becoming a fair housing issue when they're talking to you about who's come to see their house and who's made the offers. So
Yeah.
have you guys heard any more about
well,
that?
I mean,
and
for me as a
in that
listing
situation?
agent, I would be like, you know, keep your comments to yourself.
Yeah.
Whatever your comments are, keep them to yourself. I don't need
Right.
to know about your
Right.
attitudes or opinions about the buyers unless they said something about monetary or a specific comment about the house that we might need to act on because we didn't realize it was an issue, or we thought it wasn't a problem, but it is. Like, we, you know, if I told you, hey, we didn't need to paint that bright purple wall, and that's all the comments we're getting, then tell me about that stuff. But I don't, other than that, I don't want to hear about your
Yeah.
specific comments towards any buyer. And that's
Right.
the conversation I would have.
Yeah, I think that's just what I took out of the CE class, was that there's more and more litigation coming from people saying, well, I think they watched the Ring doorbell and they saw that we had, 5 kids and they didn't take our offer because we had 5 kids. And so it's hard with all this technology.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like in
And
this
the cameras to
environment, right? In
get through that.
this environment that we've been working in the last 18 months, where you're up against 10 other offers, and
Exactly.
you feel like you're writing an offer that's super competitive, right? And as a listing agent, I'm not obligated to share anything other than your offer has been presented and rejected. I don't have to tell you what it was, what it closed for, why they chose it. That's not for me to share. That's the seller's choice, right? Seller's house. But right, there's the buyer's side. Hey, I've written 10 offers. I'm in this predominantly Mormon community and I'm not Mormon. And I think they use that against me, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just to use an example of something that happened recently
Mhm.
that I've heard about as my home group broker, they're out in East Mesa. They felt like, I'm not Mormon, but I wrote a cash offer and I didn't get it accepted. And I feel like that's why. So what evidence do we have for that? There's none, but that's just what they thought. And if they thought strongly enough about it, they could have easily gone to an attorney and made everybody's life a living hell if they wanted to, right? So that's why it's super careful. Everybody has to be super careful not to give any ammunition or any inkling that there was an underlying reason for denial, right? That's keep it as an agent, listing agent communication. I would never offer anything other than the seller took a better contract. And if someone asked me, well, what was it? I would say the terms were more favorable to the seller. That's it. That's all you need to disclose.
That's a good line. Thank you for that. I'll write that down.
We always talk about that too, in when it's your listing and you're doing the public remarks, keep it about the house. When you're reviewing applications or your owner is reviewing applications on a listing for lease, keep it about the numbers. Your FICO score was too low, your debt ratio was too high, your references didn't check out. Never about the people. The public remarks is never about the people. The approval process is never about the people, and the offer is never about the people. And even if you're on the other side representing a buyer and they want to write one of those love letters, we're not a big fan of those. Keep it about the house. We love the house. It's the ideal floor plan for our family. We love the neighborhood. Our kids want to go to this school. Keep it about the house. Keep it about the property, not about us, not about our personalities, not about our heritage, not about our religious beliefs, none of that.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. And in this litigious environment that we operate on, which is real estate, which every day I hear someone's got an attorney, or I get a letter from this attorney or that attorney or this, the bottom line is it never really works out for anybody but the attorneys, but people get so upset that they want to go that route, right? It usually doesn't work out for anybody but them.
Well, one other comment about Ring doorbells and those sort of things. Keep in mind that they record outside the house. They can record all the way down to your car parked in front of the house, and so we just all have to assume everywhere we go is being recorded, and we really shouldn't say anything. And Andrew said, don't say, I totally love this house. I'll pay whatever it takes. The opposite is, what do they call that purple wall? Puke purple? Like, we don't want to do that either, because, if we do submit an offer and it's competitive, it might find its way to the bottom of the stack and not at the top of the stack. So everything we say and do is being recorded, and anything too positive or too negative could impact my ability to help you win the bid. So let's zip it all the way until we get to the next house or to the Starbucks or, wherever we're going. Don't stand outside the front door and say, can you believe where, where they keep their, just terrible, like bad idea.
Yep, I would agree. Does that help answer the question? Okay. So let's see. Let's go down this list here.
There's a whole bunch of things on the list today. By the way, the list we're looking at is what you typed in when you registered for this session today. A whole bunch of them I see brand new, want to learn, broker updates. How do I learn? Where do I go? What do I do? And I know Jenny typed in earlier something about orientation. When is the next orientation, Jenny? Is that next week?
Yeah, so next week is an orientation week, and this is great because it's not just for new agents fresh out of school or fresh out of license. It's also for agents who just want a better insight of the brokerage, but also we do a nice overview of MAP and the dashboard and all the tools and systems we have in place to offer you, which is awesome. If you can spare an hour, it's great information and it's pretty empowering to see how many tools we have available. So that's next Wednesday. And then tomorrow's MAP class, which is the commission management, goes into a much deeper explanation and shows you where you go in the system, like Andrew was talking, for those CDAs and the information provided, and also what your responsibility is as the agent to go in and make sure that all T's are crossed and I's are dotted.
Well, I can speak to that for a second because, Andrew and I take turns doing a little 2-minute broker, bit on the orientation call or session. And one of the things we talk about is externally AR, MLS, and AAR. They're both chock full of recorded webinars that you can watch at 10 o'clock at night in your PJs if you want to. If you wanted to learn more about the industry as a licensee, I'd be all over if you spent 90 hours in pre-licensing studying what you need to know to pass a test to get a license. I would spend at least the same 90 hours on those two websites watching those two things for any agent at any stage in any brokerage in the Valley. On the other hand, if you come inside the four walls, our My Agent portal map, which I'm sharing with you right now, and those various tiles about industry tools and industry agent training and broker department. One thing, kind of a commercial for the broker department, is just, click on broker department and go right to my broker corner. There's 50 short videos out there right now about various stages in the process, pre-contract, pre-disclosure, post-closing, whatever it might be. I'd say watch those. And then, of course, got to get into some Sky Slope and some other things as well. But I think if I had to pick 3 things, it would be MAP internally, our mastermind page, and then of course AR, MLS, and AAR externally, kind of a big sister, big brother, whatever concept.
And before we get too far, everybody, Jenny, who spoke just a few seconds ago, she's our agent services and huge asset to the company. And any questions you have navigating around here in my home group, we've done, I think, a pretty incredible job of providing services, providing videos, providing training. And Jenny will, she's the one to go to if you have any questions on anything that we have to offer around here at my home group. She can
just posted her number for you. I just posted her number for you, so you can, if you have any questions, you just give Jenny a call.
Andrew, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm absolutely here. I put the email agentservices@myhomegroup.com. I also act as a directory. So we have so many different departments here. If you're ever feeling lost or you don't know if you go to the brokers or the hotline, I might have some answers for you. Please reach out to me at Agent Services. I am absolutely happy to help you in any aspect of your business.
Hey, Jenny, is tomorrow's MAP training recorded?
You know what? We do not record those because it's so interactive and there's so many moving parts to that. We do want you to be live with that one, live as in Zoom. But that is one that we really want you to participate in. It's sort of interactive that way. So it just suits best to be a live recording or a live class. Live
interaction, right?
A live interaction, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Just wanted to, someone asked in the chat if that was recorded. I didn't think so, because I feel like when I took the training, they want you to go through inputting a transaction on your dashboard so you know how to do it, right? That's
correct. Yeah. Right. So and we want to get you that access. And again, this is really just to make sure our main goal, just to reiterate, Andrew, what you said, the main goal, you guys have worked so hard to get these contracts under, under contract and to get to the closing table. We want to get you paid on the day of closing. That is so important to us as a brokerage. And so in order to do that, there are some things that we want to make sure that you go in and things are buttoned up before that time period. And also understand that Sky Slope actually syncs with our My Agent portal or map. And so understanding that those two are talking to each other all the time. And so you're going to learn a lot more about the commission management system.
Okay. Well, we only have a few minutes left, so I want to start answering some of these questions. So someone asked me what my opinion is on 72 hours sold. So I will stay above the fray and just say that that's a marketing ploy that can be used in a market like we're in today. And I would like to see how it works in the changing market. So yeah. That'll be all I'll offer on that. I don't have any particular negative feelings about them as a brokerage. I just feel like it's a marketing tactic. And we could all, if 2 months ago, if I wanted to go to make 48 hours sold, I probably could have done that. I don't know if that's going to work anymore, but we'll see. We'll see how they stick around with the changing and the increase in listings. And, people may or may not be able to do that 72 hours sold. We'll see if they can continue using that tagline and using that website and promoting it as much as they do. So we'll see. I'm not sure.
What they're going to do is get a reputation as the company who sells your house quickly, right? And so, that I think that will bode well for them in the future, but they're going to certainly have to change that, come up with a way to transition that. But what they're doing is not anything indifferent that you can do, and that many agents are doing. Almost everybody seems like they take a new listing and they put it in the MLS on a Thursday and they say no showings until Monday, or back-to-back open houses on Saturday and Sunday. And they're gathering offers for 72 hours and they're presenting to the seller. And if you got a decent property at the right price point, the pool of buyers is by far bigger than the inventory of homes, and you too can be 72 hours old. It's really not even the name of their company. The name of their company is Hague Partners or whatever it is. And I don't really know how they get away with from the Department of Advertising without putting their brokerage name on every single piece, because you're required to have your broker name on everything you do, and it needs to be prominent, which means bigger than your name in most cases. They got 72 huge, and I don't even know if I ever see even Hague at the bottom in the fine print.
You never do. And then, so guys, what I want to do with the last couple of minutes here, I see a bunch of on our list about market activity, market updates, and all I can speak to is what my home group's doing as a brokerage with real data. And I would say over the past 6 months, we've averaged probably 1,500 to 2,000 transactions per month, with a high in June. May/June, we had a high. And I will say that we did have a small blip on the market at the beginning of July, where it seemed like transaction count was a little bit down, but over the past 3 weeks, we've done more transactions than that whole month. So it's just, to me, I think a couple things are going to happen personally, and all this is predicated on economy and interest rates staying fairly stable, right? With the increase in inventory, we've had, I don't know how many stories are out there, it's anecdotal, so I don't have raw data, but how many buyers gave up, how many buyers rented, how many buyers put their search on hold, how many buyers just stopped, right? Because they got beat up too many times, or wrote 30 offers, couldn't get a house. Well, I think if this trend continues with inventory, those buyers are eventually going to come back up, right? They're going to come back up because they still need a place to live. They still wanted to move to Arizona for a reason. Maybe they had a job, maybe they had whatever reason they came here. They're here. They need a place to live, and they don't want to rent, because they obviously didn't want to rent. That was just the end result of their search, their fruitless search for a house. And again, my opinion is, I think we're going to see a drastic increase in transactions for the agents who have kept in contact with those buyers. I think those buyers are going to return to the market here in the next quarter or two. And I think our inventory is going to remain pretty close to where we're at, probably around 10,000 for 2022. It's even crazy to say that that's the year we're going to go into, but that's just my opinion. And again, predicated on everything staying relatively flat. Interest rates, I think the Fed was talking today, and I think they voted to keep them relatively flat. So I don't think anything's going to change in that front. If the economy stays relatively strong and Arizona's economy is, I guess, sort of insulated because of the amount of growth we've had over the past 18 months, it's going to take a while to change the market conditions. And that's largely because of supply and demand. And, you know, the demand is down a little bit, but only because those people quit, right? They quit. They had to live somewhere and they had to make a choice. So maybe they're in an apartment, maybe they're overpaying for rent, maybe they're overpaying for an Airbnb that they locked up. But eventually those people are going to return to the buyer pool. And now that they have a place to buy, that's naturally going to increase our transaction count. So that's my 2 cents on market activity. I know that showings are down. I wouldn't say across the board. I would say it's very price point specific. Price reductions are up. Again, price point specific, area specific. So it really depends on what market you're in. And for a while, everybody was going out. So the outer markets were super hot. And the inner city markets, I like to say inside the 101, was a little bit slower. But I think that trend is not going to, I think that overall, the entire market's going to get lifted up with people who, you know, quit and now they're back.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Kind of like the opposite of a shadow inventory of homes.
Yeah,
It's a shadow
absolutely.
inventory of
I think
buyers.
we had the opposite because
Yeah.
how many times did you see on the mastermind? You know, my clients are just tired. They wrote 30 offers. They've tried to buy 30 houses and they're done. I mean, it's just anecdotally I get, but there was a lot of buyers who, you know, for 3 months, we were at 3,000 to 4,000 active listings. There was a lot of buyers who for 3 months couldn't find a place. And eventually you got to put your family somewhere to live. You can't be floating forever. So I feel like those people are going to come back.
Well, and to translate that for me, that means prices level off, you know, before they crash or dip way down, because there will constantly be, until inventory numbers get much higher or rates get much higher, like you said. And even that whole thing of like moving further out versus moving further in, that can be influenced by gas prices. You know, something like that. We saw that happen, you know, a decade ago. Everybody went to Maricopa, they went to Queen Creek, you know, then also gas became crazy. They wanted to move back in. You know, some of the builders who left off in that previous market jumped right back into building those big houses way out there. And they realized really quickly that that wasn't where the market was at as a whole. So there's a lot of factors, and you know, there can be some international unrest that can send rates up the roof. I mean, you know, despite what the Fed is saying about you know keeping things fairly constant. So anyway, well, I know that kind of puts us over the hour mark. I know it always takes us a few minutes to get started, so we're probably coming right up on that. Unless you see anything else in the chat, Andrew, or anything else, I think we've pretty much hit the list. You know, I would like to say that, you know, call the broker department, email the broker department. If you join the mastermind group, all of our contact information is right up at the top of that page. You know, sitting right there for you. I know someone called the other day, like, what's the number? Or, you know, or whatever it was. It's like all right there. Sometimes we just kind of take it for granted. It gets baked into that banner of some sort, but the departments you need are there. The hotline is there. I can tell you, I've worked with other brokerages in the past, and you know, even though SkySlope can be cumbersome from time to time, it's better than a couple of the top 5 brokers in the Valley that I've been with. And I want to just always close everything with, I love being at a brokerage where we have active ownership and management. Our 2 owners are here almost every day. We have key leaders in every department. One right next door to me is Dax Watson, who's here for in-house counsel, and that's a fantastic benefit to have. I know Andrew and I both talk to Dax all day, and I got to say, not just because he's sitting right next to me on the screen, but you have a designated broker who is in the office all the time, who's on the phone, who's in the email, who's available to me and the other brokers to come to. And that is a fantastic resource. That's a hardworking guy. That's a guy who knows it. It's a guy who cares. And I can't say enough about that. And not just because he's my boss, but because I, as an agent myself, I appreciate having a broker I can get a hold of, or a broker department I can get a hold of, where I can get some answers. And so I hope you guys can appreciate that part too.
Well, I appreciate that, Todd. Looks like we had one last question that came in at the very end. Do you have to tell a seller agent if you're looking for a house for yourself when setting up showing that I'm the agent or send? I would tell them personally. I would always tell them it's not a required disclosure until you present your offer that you're buying it for yourself. But I don't see any harm in saying that I'm looking for myself.
Well, I know one to comment on that I thought we would talk about today, but we don't have time. Maybe we'll put it on the agenda for next time. Is we get a lot of questions about agency, and I would just say to you that I was thinking on the way to work this morning that if I was at a concert selling T-shirts or something, and somebody came up and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Well, I'm selling shirts. Like, first thing I got to do is tell you what I'm doing. You got to tell people I'm a licensee. You know, whether you're working with a buyer or seller yourself. The second thing would be, and they say, "Oh, really? Well, what sizes they come in?" They call them in small, medium, and large, right? Agency comes in 3 packages: full, limited, and none. And I got to be able to explain to people when is full, when it's my buyer in a Coldwell Banker listing. When it's what's limited? Well, it means my buyer on a My Home Group listing. What does none mean? Well, it's a signed call buyer on my listing, or it's a FSBO seller when I have the buyer. If you don't know agency and you don't know full, limited, and none, reach out to us. And I was thinking, if somebody walked up to the booth, they said, "Well, you have any larges?" And they say, "No, I'm all out of those." If somebody calls you on your listing and says, "Is there any way I can get full representation?" No, I'm sorry, we're out of fulls. Full doesn't apply when it's at your listing because you represent the seller. The best you can fit them into is limited, right? And if for some reason it's your own listing, owner agent listing, I'm sorry, we're all out of limiteds too. There's no fulls and there's no limiteds left. All I got for you is none. Here, try this one on and see if it fits. And so if you have questions about agency, give us a call, shoot us a quick email. I'll be happy to explain it to you further.
But to Todd's point, the best time to talk about agency is before anything's happened.
First day.
And that, frankly, that's the only time to talk about agency.
Before
too
we have a
late.
discussion.
Yeah, it's too late.
Todd,
Yeah.
you need to write a book of Toddisms because that was one of your best.
Oh, he was?
That was a good one.
I
Wasn't it?
That
That
was
was
a
a
good
good one.
I don't know. I usually go, what? T-shirts? What does that have to do with anything? Metallica? Who? Anyway, hey guys, I appreciate your time today. Andrew, awesome. Thanks for leading
Absolutely,
us.
guys. We love doing this for you guys. We want you to be the best, most educated agents out there in the industry, giving us all a very good name, including My Home Group, but especially for our industry as a whole. I mean, we want realtors to be respected in the community, and the best way to do that is to be educated and act with the best way possible, honesty to the public, and education is a great way to do it, guys. So we really appreciate you taking the time to try to learn something today, and hopefully we taught you something, or at least gave you something to walk away with. Explain agency with a bunch of T-shirts. That's the way to do it. Have a great day, everybody.
See you later.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.